What's up, guys? Mike Sharp here. This is Sharp Investing, and the question is, why is gold going crazy? Okay, actually, I'm going to start with a different question. What is the most important financial event over the last 4 years since 2022? So is it the Fed raising rates to 5% and all the central banks around the world doing that? Is it Trump being elected and doing all this stuff he's doing and putting this crazy charge in markets after crashing it? I think the answer is no. For me, the most important event was the Ukraine being invaded by Russia. Why? Why would I say that? So because the most important thing that happened after that was that the United States and Europe confiscated $210 billion worth of FX reserves of Russia's, and they still have them, and they're collecting interest on them now. So that changed the financial landscape of the entire world going forward. It is effectively the moment where the world is going to move away from the US in a hurry as the reserve currency, right? Because they cannot, if you're not friendly with the US, think China, having, a trade war right now, other kind of economic wars going on, and, all the hostility that's involved, they can't be feeling good about all the money they have in US assets, and particularly in US treasuries, right? So what is happening now is the US reserve currency is going to be replaced, or it's going to be eroded, I think is a better way of putting it. It's very hard to get away from the US dollar, and it's going to take a long time, but I think we're at the start of it. So if we look at the FX reserves, China has over $3 trillion worth of FX reserves, and only 5% of their total reserves are in gold. But if we look at a chart of showing the Shanghai Futures Exchange gold inventories, you can see that this is going absolutely parabolic since 2024. And this is basically people trying to get away from the dollar, right? So especially, like, if you think about all the countries that have wobbly relationships with the US and Europe, and they're scrambling to find something that's solid, they can store their reserves in, right? Like, I don't think China's going to store them in rubles. I don't think Russia might, buy yuan and stuff like that. But these currencies don't have the things the US dollar and even the euro have at this point, right? Are they going to buy yen? Seems unlikely. So one of the main places that everyone can agree is a store of value is gold. If we look at the historical breakdown of how countries stored their reserves, before, let's say, 1980, maybe before 1970, when Nixon took the US off the gold standard, most of the world used gold as it's basically the backbone of its reserves, right? So it was up towards 70% before that, and then you can see the U.S. dollar becoming the giant FX gorilla, through the 90s into the 2000s, and now it's started to reverse. Like, the gold market's actually quite big. I think it's $28 trillion worth of market value in gold, but the issue is not a lot of that is actually traded. It's not expanded by much every year. It's not like the US dollar where they can just print dollars and just flood the market and flood, like any demand, they can meet it, right, with US dollars just by printing. Whereas gold has kind of like a 2% a year growth rate in terms of supply. That's how much they can mine in a year. And some people believe that's actually where the 2% inflation target comes from. So fun fact, possibly a fact. But, there's not a lot of trading, not a lot of that is traded. So a small change in demand can create a huge upsurge in the price, which is what we're seeing now, right? The backbone of the whole thing is that there is a lot more demand for gold from central banks. And you could add on top of that, there like Trump's tariffs. There's been a lot of buying because gold is seen as a safe haven in times of like uncertainty or chaos. People run to gold as a store of value, and the other stuff that's coming out of the U.S. right now too, that's eroding the U.S. dollar as the main store of value, is that like these deficits are out of control. Like they are actually in the midst of debasing the currency, and I think they're doing that in order to intentionally create inflation to shrink the size of the debt through inflation and growth, right? Because if you get, let's say you get a 7% nominal growth rate. So if you do something like that, if you have a growth rate that's bigger than the actual growth in the debt, if you have a nominal GDP growth rate that's higher, then you're going to shrink the debt proportionally, right? So I think that's what they're doing. I think Trump has a policy of like, let's just run it hot right now, and he's cutting rates and just basically going to say this economy is going to cook now, and unfortunately, that's going to probably mean inflation as well, right? Because that doesn't seem to be the primary problem now, except for the Federal Reserve. But Trump doesn't seem to believe that, right? So I guess just generally in terms of these macro theses, like if you're using it as a trading backbone, I actually don't recommend that. I talk in my other gold videos about how I actually am chart-based, right? Because I've been doing this a while, and I've heard gold arguments for 20 years, and a lot of them have not come true, right? But this one's coming true. The chart is telling me it's happening, right? So the story is lining up with the actual price behavior. If you get into a macro world and you hear these nice stories, because everything's got a nice story, like copper's got a great story, oil's got a great story. Oil's always got a great story every time you look at it. Sometimes they come true and sometimes they don't. So I would suggest, if you're like me and you want something that's more certain, I would not bet on macro stories. Like I need the story, but I also need the chart to confirm the story. And I think that's what's happening right now. So this could be wrong. There could be other reasons why gold is going through the roof, but this is my take. And I'm still holding gold. I think there's a little pullback happening right now, and I'm totally fine with it. I'm going to hold through that. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.